When you graduate from FLL, you're probably looking for programs to participate in next. However, there are so many options to choose from. The main programs are FRC, FTC, and VEX, which have thousands of teams from all over the world. That being said, you also need to consider whether to join a community or a school team. Recently, we have been receiving a lot of such questions. We just had a Q&A meeting with the Unicorn Dreamers, a team who is also wondering about what to do after FLL, and created this video based on their questions. We believe this information will be useful for the general audience. It has been 2 years since the Gummy Bears graduated from FLL. We are still all doing robotics, and we happen to have experience in FRC, FTC, and VEX. Today, we will share our personal experiences with these programs and help you get a better understanding of each one. We will introduce each program and compare them in terms of size, cost, and time commitment. We will also talk about technical preparation to join a team and tips for having a successful transition. First, let's take a look at today's speakers.
I'm Mia, I'm a freshman, and I'm part of Mechanical Advantage 6328, which is an FRC team, as well as the Groton Zebras, which is a VEX team.
My name is Jaden. I'm also a freshman, and right now I'm part of Mechanical Advantage 628 and also my school team for FTC, and it's the Ghost Robotics.
My name is Leo, and I'm a sophomore, and I've been on the Gummy Bears FLL team for 5 years, and I'm also currently on FRC 6328 Mechanical Advantage.
Now we will introduce what each program is about, starting with FRC.
It's the first robotics competition, also known as FRC. In FRC, the robots are generally a lot larger than in FTC, and they're pretty. I think at largest they can be 30 by 30, and they can also weigh up to a maximum of 150 pounds. So pretty impressive. But FRC robots also compete in 3-on-3 matches with opposing alliances, and in playoffs they compete on 3 and 4 team alliances. So FRC team membership is generally a lot larger than in other programs like FTC, and number of students on a team can range from as small as like 5 members in a small community-based team to about 150 in like a large school program. And a lot of teams elect to assign their members to different sub-teams, specializing in different aspects of robot construction, programming, and outreach. And this basically helps to utilize each member's unique abilities to the most effect. And so, yeah, being larger in size and more resource intensive than other robotics programs that are comparably popular, the cost is also pretty high compared to other programs. So some community teams or those that aren't like affiliated with a publicly funded program might charge participation fees. So the team that we're on charges around $300 per year for participation, but there's always financial aid, or in most cases there'll be financial aid available for students who need it. But school-based teams are also common in many regions of the US, so it does make participation widely available for students in public or private schools around the US. So, like an FTC, first allows FRC teams to manufacture their own parts to use in their robots, but they can also buy commercial parts through like third-party vendors. And they can also opt to receive a kit of parts, which is basically like a standard set of things that they receive from first for free. Well, not really for free, but for like the membership fee in FRC. So, yeah. So in FRC, the season kicks off in on the first Saturday of January, which is actually in just 7 days for the new season in 2025. So from there, teams officially begin the process of solving the game in what is called the build season. So teams will have a total of 8 weeks to design a robot and to manufacture, assemble, wire, program, and test it so that it can compete in the year's game. And oftentimes the first few weeks of the build season are dedicated to prototyping, sort of like in FLL, where you like test different mechanisms and their effectiveness. And yeah. And after that, uh, the competition season sort of begins in around late February or March. And most teams compete in 2 qualifying events. And so I think in Massachusetts here, we're part of the New England district, which means that we participate in these events in like New Hampshire and Rhode Island and Connecticut. And from there, based on how we perform in those events, they'll put us on a ranking list for our district. And if we rank in pretty much the top half of the district, we qualify for the district championship in Springfield. And from there, based on our performance at the district championship, we may earn a spot to qualify for the world championship in Houston. So we mainly use Java to code FRC robots, and First also provides like WPI lib and other features to write our robot code with standard features in order to play the game. And there are also a lot of open source resources available to learn from. There are more than 2,000 active teams in US, so you'll probably be able to find an FRC team near you if you live here. But there's also a resource called frcmap.com. So if you pop that in the browser, then you can pretty much see a list of all the FRC teams near you, which is really helpful for like commute information as well. Um, Most FRC teams are either school-based, family or community-based, or organization-based. So family and community teams are not really very large, and they're sort of rare because of the high resource requirement, but they can be a fun experience if you manage to be part of one. But the other two are a lot more common. So school-based teams pretty much they run primarily off of school-based funding, and sometimes they will also receive grants from sponsors and state funds. But usually they have a lot of members because it's public, it's open to the entire school, and they don't charge registration fees usually, and the membership requirement is also super restrictive. So they're a good option if you manage to find one. But like organization-based teams are like more privately organized, and they usually rely more on like sponsors and like fundraisers to raise all their money, and they might charge a registration fee, but they're also a really great experience.
Thank you, Leo. Now let's hear about FTC from Jaden.
The release for FTC, or also known as First Tech Challenge, is in early September, and the season lasts all the way until April, which is when the World Championships are held. The time commitment for FTC is relatively low, with only around 5 hours per week required, but this also depends on what type of team, which could be a school team or an organizational team, and it really depends. For building the robot, you can use custom built parts from machines like 3D machines and CNCs, as well as you can buy parts from other resources and online websites. So for FTC, the main coding platform that people use is Java, with a library known as FTC-lib, which includes a lot of tools and resources for coding. And the team size, it's usually around from 6 people to 15 people. So it is relatively smaller, but it can also get pretty big. And it covers grades all the way from 7 through 12.
Thank you, Jaden. Now I'll talk about VEX.
So VEX is very similar to FTC, which is the program that Jaden introduced. It's like the same size robots, like similar parts. The team size is also the same, like similar. It's like a bit smaller than FTC. Teams are usually like 4 to 6 students. My team is 5 students. We worked with a team that was 2 students that was really good. So like team size doesn't really define you. The coding platform is C++. And the time commitment is like similar to FTC. It's like around 10 hours per week. And then the season, it's released in April, and then you have competitions throughout fall. Oh, you also have competitions throughout winter, but it's kind of like a year-long program. So that means like you work throughout the summer a lot. My team doesn't do that because we're like school-based, so we just work a lot in fall, and that still works. One thing that sets it apart from first things is that you can't customize parts. You just use the parts that VEX gives you. So there's no CAD team. You can't like CAD your own parts and stuff.
Now let's look at differences between programs. First, we'll compare FTC and VEX, and then we'll compare FTC and FRC.
So FTC is compared to like VEX or other programs, it is comparably cheap and sized down, since there's less expensive parts on the robot. And these parts can also be custom made from like 3D printers. And this gives a lot more opportunities to expand the robot and have diverse and creative ones. The parts additionally can also be purchased from other sources and can be added onto the robot really freely. And FTC, it also has a large and pretty big community spreading internationally. So you can learn from teams, and the competitions are found like all over the world. However, there are some cons that come with FTC, as it compared to VEX, it is still much more significantly more expensive. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for teams to be managed. And as also like higher end robots, it since there's like much more creativity with a robot, it can cost a lot more to go above and beyond. Additionally, there are a lot of teams, so and there's not really that much spots to get to higher levels, so it's relatively like more competitive and harder to qualify.
For VEX, it's a really large program. There's like 2 times as many VEX teams as FTC teams.
Oh, wow.
So it's like it's really large. It emphasizes like different areas of the robot. So not just like performance on the game field, like where you have to compete. We have this thing called the skills challenge where you go to a separate game field and you have to basically demo your robot for 1 minute and like show them like what you're good at and the judges will evaluate and you can get an award for that. Cons are that like you're required to use standard VEX parts to make your robot. I guess I can be viewed as a pro as well, but you don't get as much like creativity, I guess. But you can also get creativity from that because like you can figure out how to use these pieces in a unique way. The parts can be pricier. You can't really buy them from a lot of places, just like the VEX store. The season's released in April, and competitions are in fall, so a lot of work has to be done in the summer, or you can cram it in
All
the
right.
fall.
So two competitions are like they're pretty similar in some places, but there are a lot of differences between them. So I guess I'll probably start off with FTC then. So because FTC is like not as financially restrictive as like FRC, you don't need like a big space to practice, and the robots aren't that big either. So it's more accessible to a lot of people. And having a small team size like you usually do in FTC is also like a way to get more involvement and also like uh build closer relationships with team members. And also there are a lot more teams, not just in the US, but also internationally. So competitions are very common. Uh, and there's also a high level of like a design challenge because you have to package everything into such a small robot, which is pretty fun to design for. But it's also a small field game, so you're not going to see as much like action as an FRC. And also because there are so many like FTC teams out there, it's very hard to qualify for higher levels of competition. Like I think from like a Massachusetts local competition, only 3 teams out of like 25 get to qualify to the state championship. So, and there are also a lot of design restrictions on like motors. But yeah, like also since the program is so much bigger, like a lot of team members can get involved in robot work, and there are a lot more jobs available to like maintain such a large robot. But yeah, some of the obvious cons are like there's a high resource requirement, and if you're not in a district, then it's really hard to qualify for championships.
Going into a robotics team, you might wonder, how am I going to find my place and fit in here? Well, we advise you to try out every sub-team to find your interest. Even though some may not sound very interesting to you, just give it a try. You might be surprised. Teams offer the opportunities to switch sub-teams, so don't feel shy to play around and experiment with different ones. For me, I feel that joining one technical and one non-technical team helps me balance my time and makes the experience fun for me. A technical team, which actively contributes to building the robot, works on CAD, scouting, programming, electrical, or manufacturing. Non-technical teams, which manage matters outside of robot building, are awards, sponsorship, media, and outreach. In order to fit in with the team, frequently attend meetings, competitions, and team building events to show you are dedicated to being involved. And don't be afraid to ask questions. The FIRST community is very supportive. Teams do not expect you to know anything coming into FRC. Many teams provide preseason training for each sub-team in the summer and fall before the season is released. These weekly trainings consist of lessons that start from scratch no matter your level. If you want to get a feel of what FRC is like, you can watch videos on YouTube about robot parts or look for tutorials for different sub-teams like CAD and Java.
There are a lot of helpful online resources made by the community that like help with specifically design in FRC. Like there I know Onshape 4 FRC provides a lot of helpful courses on like the basics of like sketching and creating parts, while there's also a course called frcdesign.org where you could actually find a lot of like mechanism designs and learn how to create specific types of like different sub-assemblies, which is very, very helpful for designing a robot. In your first year, it might be hard to like get involved as much, but like I do encourage like try new things and like sometimes step out of your comfort zone because like you can discover new things that like you're very interested in and work on those more and it's very beneficial.
Oh, I think like knowing like basically how Java works, I guess could help, but like past that, you really like start from the beginning when you start learning. Like a lot of it's like really specialized for robotics. Like it's usually just most people you learn most of it from like training and actually like doing with robots.
When you're first trying to find a team to join, FTC or VEX would probably be the easiest as they are easier to be in and there's much more teams that are open out there. And compared to FTRC, the game field is much smaller as well, so it can easily fit inside a home or places with open space. And additionally, the resources are a lot less intensive since the robots are smaller. And most of the budget for to power these teams usually comes from sponsorships from various companies, and also statewide grants are becoming more common, as well as fundraisers and donations or events can also provide money.
Finally, let's answer some frequently asked questions.
Yeah, so in FRC there are actually several awards that the judges will like evaluate your team for. So first recognizes a lot of areas with awards such as like having outstanding autonomous and team spirit and quality, but also the judges will hold things called a thing called pit judging, where basically they come over to your robot pit uh in between your batches and usually during quals, and then they'll ask your team questions about like your robot and sometimes your outreach. Though they also hold specific presentation sessions for awards teams to come over and present for, such as the Impact Award, which is pretty much the biggest award in all of FRC. So it basically evaluates your community outreach and awards outstanding efforts. But basically they will have like an interview session for that. They will have a specific time to go and present in like in front of a panel of judges. And then there's also the pit judging, which could happen at random too. So whenever the judges feel like it, they can just come to your pit and ask you questions to figure out some things about your team. So during competitions, we actually have a lot of roles for different people. So most of the people who sit in the stands are called scouters. Basically, what they do is basically they take these tablets and they watch the qualification matches to gather information on the teams. And from there, when we go to form an alliance, we could use that information to make picks in alliance selection to help make the best possible playoff alliance. Also, besides that and the driver team, we also have a pit crew, which basically they whenever we bring our robot back to the pit after a match, they basically perform all the necessary like battery swaps, bumper swaps, and like repairs that we'll need to get our robot ready for the next match. We also have something called a AAA team. So that's basically the advantage. It stands for Advantage Alliance Aid, but it's something that some teams do. But basically, what they do is they go out and they essentially we check on our alliance partners for our next matches to make sure that they are in a full working order, and if they're not, we go and help them so that we can ensure that we can perform well in our qualification matches and rank high.
So FRC, we have like a lot of volunteering opportunities. Like I said earlier, we can mentor like FLL teams. Since we have the Impact Award and also FTC has the Inspire Award, teams tend to do a lot of outreach because they want to get that award and they want to help the community. So honestly, you'll do a lot more outreach than you did in FLL, which is really good.
And that's all for today's video. We hope you were able to gain some valuable experience into the vast world of competition robotics beyond FLL. As a reminder, this video is just meant to serve as an introduction to the programs and not as a comprehensive guide. We will have videos on each individual program in the near future. Until then, stay tuned.